Good afternoon. Welcome to our Health Community of Interest meeting with ACT-IAC today. Can't believe it's already December 15th already. My name is Todd Pantesi. I am the industry chair or co-chair of this organization. We'll start our program in a moment. We're still waiting for people to join. Looks like we have 35 people. We are being recorded. I'll remind that of all of you. So as we look, we have 37. Very good. So we'll get started. Again, thank you for your time today. We're going to launch right into our effort. I just want to make one little plug for our health community of interest before we go into our explicit program today. I'm just going to put in the chat here in a moment. If you have not seen this already, please do take the time to look at our website through ACT-IAC just so you can see some of the other programs that we offer. We do a lot of very focused deep dives with organizations like the VA and the National Institutes of Health. We do strive to have programs on a monthly basis, and with Ratima's help, who I'll introduce in a moment, we do hope to have regular programming starting in January every month. We took a bit of a step back, of course, with the government being shut down for a while. So with that, I will turn it over to our program and our guests. Do tune into us also on LinkedIn for the ACT-IAC Health Community of Interest to see information on future events that we have. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ratima Kataria with ICF, a friend, colleague who is really so key to our organization's ability to bridge the gap between industry and government. And I'm very excited for her to introduce our, until recent, HHS officials who will be joining us today. Ratima?
Thank you very much, Todd. I really appreciate that warm welcome. Well, welcome everyone. Grab your coffee or maybe second cup by now. It's a Monday morning. Settle in. Happy Monday. So today's conversation is all about pulling back the curtain on federal health IT. What worked, what didn't work, and what industry really needs to know. So hopefully think of this as your insider's guide to partnering smarter with government. As Todd mentioned, I'm Ratima Kataria, Vice President of Federal Health at ICF. I have been in the IT space for about 3 decades now, including a tour of duty as a Deputy CIO at Department of Health and Human Services, HHS Operating Division HRSA during COVID. It is my privilege to moderate this session with my former HHS colleagues. We have with us today Sohail Chaudhry, former Chief Technology Officer at FDA, who led major multiple modernization efforts and knows the ins and outs of tech transformations in regulatory environments. Hi, good morning, Sohail. Thank you for joining us. We also have with us Avery Muse, former Executive Director, Office of IT Operations at HHS, with deep experience in driving enterprise-level change and navigating complex agency priorities. Good morning, Avery. Thank you for joining us. And last but not the least, we have with us Nick Niefeld, former contracting officer with NIH and CATS, bringing unique perspectives on procurement realities and how industry can better align with federal needs. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Nick. Welcome, all of my friends, and these are all my former HHS colleagues and friends and family, so this is really a very special group for me. A few housekeeping items for our audience here. Our panelists are open to and actually very excited to answer any questions that may help you. We will request that you put your questions in the chat around 12:45 mark, which is 15 minutes before the end of the event. We can't promise that we'll be able to answer them all, but we are going to monitor the chat and try to answer as many questions as we can in roughly last 10 minutes. And hopefully we'll find other opportunities to connect with you to continue the engagement. With that, let's dive in. So Avery, let's start with you. Looking back at your time in the federal health IT, what's one big lesson you learned from a modernization effort? Maybe something that surprised you or changed how you approach technology? So talk to us about that. But as each of the panelists gets mic for the first time, also if you can start with a little bit fun fact about yourself, that would be great also.
All right, thanks, Ratima. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, as always. Quick fun fact about me, and I made a post about it, I think around Veterans Day. The fun fact is I joined the Navy first and learned how to swim second. So when I got into the U.S. Navy, so the fun fact is in how what I tell my teams as I meet with them, especially as I introduce myself to new teams, it's like, that's how I'm wired, right? That tells you a lot how I'm wired. So I dive in first and I figure it out once I'm in there, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect to start, right? So that's the fun fact that I would like to share today. So federal IT modernization in health. So Ratima, if you don't mind, I would like to just step back kind of on how I'm wired from previous assignments that kind of inform how I operate in modernization today.
Absolutely.
So I was at DISA, so Defense Information Systems Agency, around the time where they were transitioning from being just an IT transport service provider, and they were transitioning into offering enterprise services, right? So the idea was that the Secretary of Defense wanted the Department of Defense to be more efficient with the dollars, right? So everyone, all camp base posts, the stations and organizations had their own email servers, their own teams managing those email servers, and it was a lot of different funds that were spent towards that. So they wanted to centralize it. So, but one of the things, and that made sense, right, from a efficiency standpoint. But when you looked at being effective, the effective part, the second part of that, one of the things that we struggled with early was the adoption of the new construct, right? Because the centralized approach didn't necessarily take into account those local nuances and how services were used locally. So one of the things that I learned that I use towards for my modernization efforts is I develop solutions with the customer and not for the customer. So if you heard me speak, I speak a lot about going from a vertical IT focused kind of siloed approach to a more horizontal approach. So more mission integration. So the problem is that IT-led efforts often miss mission relevance. And if you shadow IT, we hear everyone complains about shadow IT, but when you don't talk to the customers or meet their mission, that kind of spawns shadow IT or fragmented services. So one way that I've used to avoid that is I use fusion teams. So I build teams with cross-functional expertise. So with the mission owners, with IT, with contracts, with people, so that the service can be more relevant to the mission and will be more likely to be adopted. Somebody has a hot mic there. So yeah, so the co-created solution reflect real world workflows. It builds trust and adoption. So and another way to kind of measure that is going from, when you look at modernization efforts, going from your standard, like service level agreements that you have with IT systems to implementing experience level agreements. So when you think of it from an experience level agreement standpoint, that automatically kind of forces you to think of the impact to the mission. So I don't use SLAs anymore, or use XLAs in conjunction with SLAs to help you drive that mission focus. So 4 practical insights that I would have to offer is to engage with mission stakeholders early and continuously. One, and that's the first one. The second one is to translate requirements into measurable mission outcomes. The third one is to empower them with accountability. So bringing in those mission stakeholders brings in accountability. And then the fourth, again, measure adoption and experience, not just SLAs and compliance. So I think that's for me, whether in the health space, so we know that you're hearing a lot about modernization now, especially with the reduction in the reduction in staff and all of that. So we have to modernize technology. So those are things how I would approach it.
I love it, Avery. I absolutely love it. And my big takeaway from listening to you was a very important thing you said over there. We all in our respective roles have dealt with shadow IT, right? And we have tried to centralize things. I think it's a very important question that oftentimes gets missed is actually asking the stakeholders why this shadow IT even happened, spawned in the first place, right? There was something missing. There was a gap they were trying to fill. So I really appreciate you kind of zooming in on that a little bit. What you shared there was amazing. Sohail, I'm just so glad that I don't have to answer the question after Avery and follow him. So why don't we share the mic with you?
Yeah, so I love the analogy and the examples, as well as the categorization as well that Avery did, and that is extremely important. A lot of stress kind of goes into the reporting structures, meeting the SLAs, and we all know this, we all share this pain of trying to avoid not getting into this death by PowerPoint type of a scenario where, yeah, all the pie charts and everything, whatever is being tracked, whatever is being reported, whatever has been worked on, if it all looks green, then why are the problems not being solved? To your point, Ratima, right? Then why do either the customer base or someone in their feels the need of, you know what, I need to just go ahead and do it. It's not because everyone loves doing IT. It's not that beautiful of a thing. I mean, we went to school for it. Some of us, we like it, but that's not the real deal, right? There's more to that. So I think we loosely use this term a whole lot within IT, human-centered. It really starts at every, I'll say that it's at every stage. It's a team sport that needs to be done from reporting, from analyzing, from working, from execution. We need to put a human face on this and really understand what Avery highlighted, that is understanding the mission, understanding the business concept of operations, and then getting into execution. All of that service level agreement, office level agreement is important, but that's not everything.
Completely agree with you, Sohail there. Nick, I'm curious to know what are your thoughts on this? And also, actually, just to remind you, don't forget to share a fun fact about yourself before you answer the question about your lessons learned.
Sure. A fun fact, over the pandemic, when we were working more at home, I got sucked into YouTube and watching people do ultra running and hiking, like the long trails. So I'm not an ultra runner by any means, but I did do my first marathon last year. And so now I've been chasing, trying to get to the point where I could do maybe a 50K in March of this year.
Wow.
So that's my little fun fact, that I caught the bug, and I understand why people like it now, because before I thought running was awful. It's just torture. But I could see now the value in it and the therapeutic aspect of running, and why I put myself through the misery midway through. But no, it's great to be here, and I agree with Avery and Sohail and everything they've shared thus far. One thing I heard Avery mention was, a lot of these offices can be siloed. So from a procurement aspect, when we're looking at these requirements and modernizing IT, I've noticed, specifically at the NIH or HHS as a whole, HHS has many agencies that fall under it, but not all these agencies communicate. And a lot of these agencies are working towards a similar mission, or can use similar platforms that one agency is using that one does not have, or one is creating, one does not currently have in their purview to create. So I think from a procurement, I think communication was huge for us at NIH, where if one IC institute, NIH has 27 institutes, if one of the institutes was creating a data platform, it would behoove them to share that with one of the other 27 institutes that they would ultimately work with or collaborate with, because one IC is creating it and the other IC has not thought about it yet, they're eventually going to need information. They're eventually going to need to share the portal database. And rather than having to ask for permission, can I use your database for XYZ? Let's talk on the front end and say, how can we all work together to create this database together? And then there's no asking permission and going through the processes of granting access. We're all working together from the get-go and we're all on the same page.
I love you sharing that, Nick. And just to add a little bit more color to it, I'm sure folks who are listening to us tuned in today are familiar that even within NIH, so NIH itself is a behemoth organization, right, with 27 different institutes, centers, and offices, ICUs, as you said. But not all of them are the same shape and size, right? Some of them, they have got more funding, they have got stronger IT or technology staff, and they are able to stand things up. But there are smaller ICs who necessarily do not have the same kind of resource access that some of the larger ICs have. So to your point about when those platforms or shared services, et cetera, are being created by the larger ICs, is communication and collaboration is key to see how some of the smaller ICs can benefit from it. And Avery, I'm thinking the same kind of situation is actually applicable even across HHS, because you sat at that HHS level, right? Don't you think the same kind of thing applies? Because not all operating divisions have same type of resources. There are smaller OpDivs who don't have the same type of funding or resources or IT staff than some of the larger ones like the CMS, CDCs, or the FDAs of the world have, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So in my former role, I provided services to the smaller OpDivs. So I was basically,
Right.
I always say I had the hardest job because I provided services to these CIOs, to my peers over there. So it was fun. But to your point is, how do we streamline and help those smaller organizations that don't have like bodies to throw at it? And I think we'll touch on that later, right? So we have to standardize, and one effort that we did, and I think Sohail may have been part of it as well, where we standardized our Microsoft Teams environment, just something M365 environment in general. So we led an effort, and my friend Nick Ipiotis, now of ARPA-H, he, like a hot potato, my first day literally on the job, he said, "Hey, this is yours, like take it." But connecting the entire department just with something as simple as M365 enabled collaboration, being able to visually see free busy. So all of those manually, if you think of the whole Department of Health and Human Services, manually reaching out, oh, when are you available, coordinating meetings and stuff. Now you can see presence, free busy, availability. You could chat with somebody and all that. I mean, that saves tens of thousands of hours in what I like to term is minutes to the mission. So it's minutes that now that were wasted previously that now can be applied to the mission of the department and not wasted on trying to, just do admin coordination stuff.
Love it what you said there. And I think I'm going to assume that a lot of the audience we have today, people who have joined us, are our industry vendor partners here. So what is the takeaway for them from this entire conversation? I think the takeaway is when you are talking to your target clients or your current clients and coming up with ideas on how to solve the problem, potentially also think outside the box and think bigger picture, right? Is how can this idea serve not just one, but multiple constituents in terms of the health IT target client space. So that would be a takeaway, I think, that our vendor partners probably should walk away with. So Sohail, now fun question for you. You have seen plenty of vendor pitches, and now you're on the other side of the aisle. I would like to get your and Avery and Nick's sage advice on what are some of the most common mistakes that you have noticed. If you could wave a magic wand of how people made good use of your time, what would you want vendors to do differently?
Ratima, I first of all love the question that you have posed. On the same token, I neglected And not to mention my fun facts, so I'm going to take a step back and start with
please do.
that. But unlike my colleagues who are doing something, that is pretty neat. And one likes how to swim. The other one loves how to run. I just like food. So me and my wife, we travel for food. I know it's not probably as adventurous as that, but there's an internal joke that I sometimes find myself into, and that is like, Sohail, did you join Food and Drug Administration because you like food that much? Might be true, but with that said, I also want to extend my gratitude to all of my colleagues over here. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be around all of you, and Ratima, for you to taking the lead in establishing this platform that is clearly a resource to others. And with that said, the part about any relationship, when we are trying to tackle it, when we're trying to approach, you need to remember that this is a very basic initial step that we are talking about in terms of how to get into the do's and the don'ts and building any type of relationship, personal, professional, what have you. People tend to remember, the first time we met, how did the discussion went, etc. So there's not really a shortcut in how the results could be guaranteed in any of the discussion, but I have definitely, you're spot on, seen a lot of don'ts that make me come to the point that though it's a basic thing, but it's a fundamental thing. And I think there's some thought that needs to be placed in to set some expectations that this work, first and foremost, is not easy. Getting into any sort of relationship, it's just not easy. And build out of that trust part is something that we need to keep in mind as our end game over here in terms of what we are trying to do, right? And that requires some research, that requires taking out some time. It requires a discipline within itself that actually equates to a gradual trust that gets built. So focusing on that value-driven engagement, again, taking some time out before getting into that discussion is important. I just mentioned the human centricity, the human-centered approach. I know in IT we use that a whole lot when we are dealing with technology. We actually need to apply that in these type of engagement as well. That when we are reaching out, whether it's via email, which does not work most of the time, in-person dialogue discussions, which could be very, very impactful. We need to emphasize the empathy part over here. We need to be active listening. Can't be walking in with the script and say, hi, how are you doing? And then get into the discussion and then end with, can I get on your calendar? It does not work like that. That's just a bad formula. And please do not try it on your first date. It's just not going to work. You need to like get into and I guess knowing yourself and getting into avoiding whatever one finds themselves as the common pitfalls for themselves, because folks who are doing it for the first time, hopefully can take some lessons from what we are sharing over here collectively. But on the same token, if you've done it enough, you probably have enough data to kind of inform your next steps in terms of what works with clients and what does not work with clients. The taxes that don't work, they're most likely not going to work for the most part. Long-term relationship building, I would say, is the key. That's what I'm kind of seeing more and more as I'm on the other side, that a lot of the engagements that I have observed being on the federal side comes out with a very transactional taste to it. The discussion does not always feel like that it's a discussion that's focused on a long haul relationship or a solution that one is trying to build. So I would say that's something to kind of contemplate and pay some attention to. One of the other things that I kind of reflect on a whole lot, and I know this becomes challenging, especially if you're trying to talk to someone in an area that you have no or limited clue about, or the agency's mission, and that's why I said, the homework part is important, is it's really taking a genuine interest in what the mission is all about and what the personality that you're dealing with are working on, or what's probably keeping them up in night or at nighttime, right? So these are related but still separate. There's a human face at one part that you're dealing with, and also the mission. And one of the other things that I would also say that comes to mind often is the part, I think it was Peter Drucker who actually mentioned it once, that the most important thing in communication is really hearing what wasn't said, the unspoken thing, and that really requires an active listening. So again, whether we're trying to talk to our neighbors, someone in the community, a potential client, approach with that client relationship mindset, have patience, go with some genuine interest, have that respect part be part of that, and do your homework. The homework part is very important, because if you're trying to take some shortcuts, that relationship will most likely wind up being transactional. Now, one could debate that there's been some fortunate ones, but at that point we're just playing with luck, right? It could always happen, but planning for these discussions is extremely important.
Sohail, it is so amazing. We have talked about this before. This is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart. For folks who have heard me speak before, know that how much I preach and talk about not being transactional about relationships. The one thing you have to remember is it's human beings sitting on the other side of the table. They are just as same kind of human beings that we are. Long-term relationships, invest in the long game, be truly and genuinely interested in what their pain points are, what does success going look like for them, what are some of the challenges they are facing, and don't stop connecting with them just because they do not have a contract to offer you in the next quarter. That's what we mean by transactional, right? And when all of the changes in the federal government that took place this year, it was interesting to me when I went out for coffee with a couple of former HHS members. They said, now is the time when we found out who truly were our friends and who were not, which people checked in on them versus not. It is it may appear like a small thing, but I think it is a really big thing. In the end, it's all human beings. Relationships matter a lot. And having been on all sides of the table, and I'm sorry I'm taking the time to share some of my perspectives on this topic too, is on the industry side, we always say capture is king, right? There is only one way to win opportunities, and that's capture, capture, capture. And a huge part of capture is client intimacy, knowing their pain points, and client relationships. So relationships is the underlying factor to all of that. Most companies can solve the technical problems and have got super smart people. Relationships is what differentiates things. So just wanted to also chime in and share my perspective there. Nick, what do you think about this topic? And especially, Nick, if you can zoom in on something that Sohail said, I would love if we can double click on it. He talked a lot about do your homework, do your research. What does that even mean to you from a contract standpoint?
Yeah. I think he brought up a good point about mentioning know your audience, know who you're talking to virtually. Don't just go in with a blanket statement of we're company ABC and we're going to take care of all your issues. You have nothing to worry about. You really have to figure out what their actual issue is between letters A and B and address that, not just what they put on their RFPs or their RFIs. I think a lot of times I see contractors come in and just give us a blanket response to an RFI, to an RFP, and say, here you go, we can do it. We have experience helping past clients in here and there. But when you really start reading what they provide, they're not providing anything that you can't find on their first page of their website as soon as you click on it. And while that might give you a quick overview, oh, they have the experience, like you mentioned, Ratima, they have the expertise, they have the staff to provide you that service or or a project that I'm good, but are they the best pick for you? And I think when I look back at previous procurements, the best options for us were the vendors that submitted tailored RFP responses, tailored capability statements. They didn't just email me at the time of RFI or RFP. They would check in periodically, like you guys mentioned, the human aspect. Even when there wasn't a need for a response from them, they would still call and check in. And they got to know me, I got to know them. And to an extent, that's important. I know that's not professional, quote unquote, but it's good to know who you're working with. You want to like who you're working with ultimately. I want to like that I'm working with Ratima, Sohail, or Avery. And if I like you, it doesn't mean you get all my work, but maybe that 1% helps. That 1% between picking you or picking the company next to you, it goes to you because I know you're trustworthy and a good person. If you can meet all the other requirements and needs that we have. So I think it all comes down to not being transactional and actually taking time to respond to that agency's needs by actually showing you read the 2-3 pages I posted on SAM.gov, or when I email you or call you, or you call me or email me, it's not just when is this coming out or when is that coming out. We have more substance than that.
Love it, Nick. Avery, your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely about being connective, and it's pretty interesting being on in multiple phases. So I've been on the government side, right, being the recipient of those briefs and engagements. Now switching to my new role, I started out, I tell people the training wheels for me is more consulting. So in me even negotiating who I would consult with, I'm like, okay, what's the value? What do you have to offer that when we get together, that's first it aligns with my brand, it aligns with my brand, and then as we engage, because everyone wants to get in front, everyone wants a meeting, everyone wants, oh, can you get me in front of this person, that person? Well, what are you going to say? What are you going to offer? What value are you going to give to that person when we meet with them? So if I spin this chip on you today, when I call them tomorrow after they met with you, are they going to answer my call again? It'll be like, no, Avery, the last time you brought me somebody, it wasted my time, right? So they don't want to waste the time. And the interesting thing, and then the third phase is in my own, like ramping up my own business, I am engaging with customers. So I just had a call today with the health system, the CIO health system. But what I did is I studied up on the CIO. I know he graduated from the West Point. I knew he used to be a contractor. I knew some things about him that from that human side that Sohail mentioned that I could connect with and resonate. So, and of course, I had to rib him about the Navy beating the Army this week. But that just breaks the ice, right? And it starts like a more personal engagement. And then I also knew, I was prepared enough to know, I knew the mission. I knew what the federal strategy was, aligned with the state strategy, aligned with the healthcare strategy, and aligned with the solutions and services that I plan to offer. So I knew I could pull the thread on all of that stuff. So I was prepared for that meeting. So I was prepared for that meeting, and I didn't want to waste the time. So the idea is like to be prepared, and I think like Nick said, it's not like I want them to like me, but more important, I want them to trust me. I want them to be able to trust me and say, okay, if I bring this person in, that's all people want. Somebody, like if I bring you in here on whether it's a $100,000 or $100 million contract, I want to be able to trust that you can get the job done, that I'm not going to have to babysit you, or it's going to be a reflection on me. So it's important on being super prepared when you go in.
I love that, Avery. Another term that sometimes we use it in a very dilute way, and many people tend to think it's a fluff term, but I strongly believe in it, is thought leadership. bringing some thought leadership to the table, not just trying to already have a pre-baked solution in your mind and you're trying to shoehorn a round peg in a square hole, but actually being a trusted advisor and helping them think through it from different angles. So I think having that thought leadership is what makes you a trusted advisor, a trusted partner, and a friend to them. And I think that that can be really a needle mover. So just wanted to add that. In an attempt to make it a little bit more interactive and fun, I do want to ask a quick poll question to our audience here is, how many of you had to have a major pivot this year? You know, just put in a yes or put in an emoji or something. Pivot, right? Maybe a whole new definition of pivot. How many of you have had to pivot? And I'm expecting a lot of thumbs ups and emojis there. And if you have any interesting story to share that you can share publicly in this forum, please feel free to put it in the chat window about what kind of pivots you have had to do. So if there is any fun anecdote that you want to share, please go for it. We will read them out. And also we are at the 12:38 mark. At around 12:45 or so, we will start opening it up for questions. So if you can think of a few questions for our panelists here, start putting them in the chat window around the 12:40-ish mark. All right, so on the theme of pivoting, we all know that has been the theme of the year, and we all have pivoted in and exercised our elastic powers more than we have ever exercised before. So for sure, there were a lot of interesting lessons learned and leadership lessons this year. So with that being the theme, the question I have for our panelists, and any one of you can start there, is, given now that you have seen a little bit of both sides of the table, you were in the federal government, you are on the industry side, it's been several months, what is your advice to the industry on staying agile? I don't think we are done with pivoting. I think pivoting is going to continue over the next couple of years or so. What is your advice to the industry folks is when they are working with their current clients, target clients, the federal leaders, how do they remain agile? What does agile mean in this sense?
Yeah,
Anyone of you can start. Please go ahead.
I can start. So I think, so right now we are, or over the last 10 months, let's say, we're in a paradigm shift, I think. So we're in a paradigm shift. And what do I mean by that? So in the past, we were in more of a butts in seats model, right? So the government did not do a good investment into technologies, processes, and things like that. So it wasn't a good investment in those areas. So what we did was threw bodies at it, right? So we overcame those inefficiencies by throwing bodies at it. And now when you rip those bodies away, you have to do more, you have to have smarter, more innovative approaches. So I think right now, like the implications that is to industry is that any vendor that is stuck in like a staff augmentation type model is probably going to get weeded out. It's probably likely going to get weeded out. So the agencies are looking for partners that bring creativity, bring automation, and mission aligned innovations to the table. So that's what they, and this is the kind of term that I'll leave with. So you have contract partnerships. So the contract partnerships is, okay, we're going to deliver some services according to the statement of work. It's going to be, and we heard the term transactional a bunch today, it's going to be transactional and more compliance driven. So, and that's going to be aligned with the FAR. I'm familiar with all of that stuff and the legalities around that, but that is more rigid. But then you have covenant partnerships. That's the so covenant partnerships. If I'm a covenant partner, then a covenant partner is more aligned to the mission. So it commits to the mission. The shared risk is they adapt alongside the agency. So when the agency has to pivot, the government has to pivot. The vendor is able to pivot with the government. So and it's just. Trusted partnership is important and it's more flexible and more pliable. So I think being a covenant partner is what is the government's looking for these days, rather than just a contractual partner.
Makes a lot of sense. So
And Yeah, Ratima, read my mind. I was just about to add one more thing to it Avery just mentioned, and that is more from a corporate standpoint. And to your question, um, what can folks who are seeing all the pivot and all the changes, how can they prepare? What can they do? It's just not really being agile. And I truly mean it. I know we most of us do believe, and most of us are pretty agile when it comes to developing solutions, shifting, pivoting from just a solution providing standpoint. But organizationally, I think it is extremely important to come to rest with this reality, and that is that whatever got you here is not going to get you there. This is just not a simple pivot. This is a change of complete concept. Realize, recognize the era that we are part of. AI is a big piece into it. It just changes a whole lot of what we are doing. The mindset of, he or she has been supporting a system, back to Avery's point, for 10, 15, 20 some years. That model is not here to stay. It's not working. It has actually not really worked, but it has been dragged for some time. And I think that has came to an end right now. There will be very limited, very minimal, rare scenarios where that will move forward, but it is all about some serious transformation, and it starts with that mental transformation, recognizing that whatever we've done, yeah, look at it in your rearview mirror, learn the lessons from it, because history is where you can, gain all the lessons from. But now shift to a complete different model of providing that value, and that really requires some radical thinking. That requires us to think about the business, think about what is the end game, keep the end in mind, then reverse engineer, and then go about doing that. And I think the worst thing one can do, that is that have a solution in mind and just walk in with that.
Yeah.
That's just not going to work.
Great. Nick, any thoughts? Anything you would like to add to this?
Yeah, we're all talking about, and we've heard streamlining is the new move. We're going to make everything easier. And as Avery and Sohail both mentioned, not really the case. It's not going to be easier. It's just going to look different. There's going to be different hurdles that the government's going to have to jump over, that contractors are going to have to jump over to try to attain new work. I think something that will be important, and Avery kind of mentioned it on the sense of being a coveted partner to the government, is looking at teaming. Team is going to have to be something that maybe companies are going to have to look more into. I know everyone wants to win their own work, just from a business perspective, but these trusted partners are going to be even more important now to have, as people look into the future to grow their businesses, look for new opportunities. I think teaming is going to have to be higher on their list of to do, and to gain those relationships in a positive way.
I love all of these answers. And if I can add a little bit of my perspective to the same question here is, we all have oftentimes talked about implementing change government on programs or in the federal government, right? Many of us, when we are positioning ourselves or talking about that thought leadership with our clients, we are talking about, in addition to the technical solutions, how change management is so important and it's going to enable success. What I want to do a call for action is the exact same applies to the industry side as well. We all should also do a little bit of take a step back and do some deep thinking and introspection on what change management do we need to implement on the industry side, on the vendor community side, to be able to go to the table more effectively and engage in those conversations with government. So I think this is something that oftentimes I don't hear about people talking within the organizations. So this is something that we should also probably think about, not just change management as it relates to the client, but change management that's inwardly focusing as well. So that's just some food for thought. I know we are at 12:47 mark. It seems like we can have and continue this conversation for the entire day, but we just have a few minutes remaining. So I'm going to read out a couple of questions from the chat here. One of our attendees, Chandra, thank you so much for the question. He said, keen to know this panel's take on the government tech force initiative announced today, which, to be honest, I briefly glanced at just a few minutes before the panel started. It came out probably less than an hour ago. And I think that Tech Force initiative is about OPM leading an initiative on getting 1,000+ or so innovative people from the industry so that they can come and bring in fresh ideas and perspective, especially folks like data scientists and engineers and so on. And it seems like a number of the high-tech companies are participating in it. So our audience here is interested in knowing what is your take on it. I can just start with the answer, and then if you all can chime in on that. I personally think, without going into too much detail, as I said, I just briefly glanced through it. I think it is an absolutely great initiative. As we have talked about, typically for the last decades, history has been that government in its adoption of emerging technology can be a few years behind the commercial sector. So I think with this Tech Force initiative, it opens the door in a different manner of bringing in a lot, bringing in a lot of that tech talent in and making it, removing some of the barriers for entry and opening those doors. I know it has been attempted in a few different ways in the past, but I think this is a great initiative where we can get fresh ideas from the tech talent. And especially if a lot of the big tech companies are supporting it, it could be a positive thing. Again, proof will be in the pudding, but that's just my very initial take as this just got released fresh hot off the press. Any of you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, for me, so I haven't read it yet. So thanks for bringing that to my awareness so I can read up on it. But it sounds like it's in response to, if you've heard over the past several months in different venues, it's been some discussion around bringing in and having more tech type government folks. So right, it's a paradigm shift, right? So we started with hands-on tech folks in the government that could turn around, then we say, no, you guys are more senior level. You need to be, we're going to make you more PMs, contract oversight, and we're going to outsource that that technical work to contractors, right? And now with this new paradigm shift, this new pivot, that the thought is that the government folks aren't technical enough, right? And it's not any fault of the people. It's just how the culture has changed throughout the years and transition, and now it's just another one of those transitions. So if I were looking at just listening briefly to how you described it, is that this is a way of augmenting that, right? How do they accelerate getting that talent in without worrying about the hiring system and everyone going out? And then without getting political on it, and there's hiring freezes too, so you can't even get the talent in. But yeah, so it's just a way of getting to that talent that they feel that was lacking, I think.
Sohail and Nick, is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, Ratima, I'll just add one thing specifically for the audience over here, and just like both of you, my review on this has been actually, Ratima, briefer even than yours, but my take is similar, and that is there's always the what and the how part, right? What does the government want, right? We can. I wouldn't say very easily, but we can definitely find that out. That what are the pain points? What does the government want? What we are seeing right now in terms of these initiatives, these platforms, and these whether it's a chili cookout by one organization or a hackathon or something of this nature, end of the day, this helps others come in and show how they can solve a certain problem, right? We do know that IT is the enabler of the mission. This is some room. This is an area to exercise. I think what I'll say as a takeaway over here for the audience would be that in your planning for calendar year 26 and onwards, I think you can take these samples that while there's been a lot of pivoting and changing, but there's still some good room for growth. there's definitely a big light at the end of the tunnel because there is some transformation happening, of course, and make some space for all of this. These type of efforts could result into being resource intensive. So you need to plan for these, but these could be game changer. You have an opportunity to come, show what you got, flex as much as you want, and try to solve a problem. So I think these are things to get us all excited about.
I love it. I'm going to read a couple of questions here. We will try to go them in a rapid fire way. Somebody has put a very interesting question here. I'm going to try to paraphrase it. A lot of the problems that the government has dealt with, like data management, cybersecurity, etc., they're all the same problems that we have heard for the last 10 plus years. That's true. There's truth to that. And the person is saying, why does the panel feel this is the time everything is going to change? Why is this change going to be the one that solves years and years of the same problems we have had? It's not like it's been not attempted in the past. I think it's a very astute and a good question. Do any of our panelists have a take on it?
I can take a first stab
Yeah.
at this, and that is that I think philosophically we can all agree to the fact that yes, the hashtags are pretty much the same, whether it's cyber, whether it's data. But then what has really changed? I think we need to zoom out a bit over here and reflect on how we have changed. And it differs from agency to agency, but how we have changed as consumers. For instance, are we consuming the same old things that we were consuming in the past? I'll tell you that I 20 years ago used to shop differently, and now I shop differently. Does that expose us and our loved ones to any type of risk where maybe some things that we are doing as consumers are changing the whole ecosystem around us, where now as a nation, now we're dealing with a whole lot of import, maybe import and export? Are there safeguards? Again, we're talking about the same data or same cybersecurity, whatever discipline you're in, but we ourselves are evolving. The globe, the ecosystem that we live in is evolving, and there are new vulnerabilities, there are new threats, there are new opportunities, as well as there are new problems that we are now over here to solve. So to avoid being redundant, I think that's one thing to kind of keep in mind as we are trying to approach the mission sets of different agencies.
Yeah, and I think that today one of the differences for the opportunity, now whether we fully take advantage of the opportunity, it may be another conversation, but the opportunity is available because now, like in the past, people are so territorial, right? So they are protecting their own like area or whatever. So, and we heard Nick talk about the 27 centers or whatever of NIH and all that stuff. So if under this new administration, they are kind of making it known that they want that to change. They want that to change, and and the folks that are in place have to move out to changing that. So I think that's the difference from before. It was talk. Now there's not necessarily concerted, dedicated action towards it. Now the conditions are ripe for change. The conditions are ripe for change if the right leadership is there to push the change intentionally. I think that's the difference.
Nick, your thought?
Yeah, I agree. I was going to mention that the government's still bureaucratic, but I think with the new administration in place, there have been some signs of they've ripped old programs apart, and that's going to allow space for these new programs to come in, or these new initiatives to come in potentially. Whether they'll be successful or not, we shall see. But just from a perspective where the old has kind of been ripped out and now there's this empty space where the new can come in, maybe this is the time where these problems could be somewhat solved. I'm not going to say completely solved, but moving forward in solving these issues. So that's what I see from that dilemmas. the can has been kicked a little down the road, but they have made some steps in the right direction.
I'm going to go through only one more question, and in interest of time, I'm going to request any one panelist to give their take on it. It's a very great question. Sometimes we want to meet with folks like yourselves. I'm assuming they meant when you were in the federal government, not to pitch our companies, but to listen to you, to learn more about your priorities or problems, not published in the RFI or RFP documents. That's right. That's what we are asking them to do. But I also know, being an industry vendor myself, that people don't always answer your emails or take your calls, right, when you do the outreach to the government. What motivates you to accept such meetings and opportunities to have a conversation? I will request only any one of you to go, whoever wants to raise their hand and take a stab at it.
I can speak.
Please.
You know, from the procurement perspective, one is persistence. You're right. You might email me multiple times and I might miss it. I might email you back and say sometime. So persistence is definitely key. But I think we've been saying it for the past hour, is building that relationship past the requirement. You know, there's going to be plenty of industry days where you might meet these people in person, and taking that advantage to get to know someone, find out who their favorite football team is. Sounds silly, but that's not talking about business. That's just talking about your personal life. And I think building those personal relationships, again, just gives you that extra edge or extra advantage moving down the road to get that meaningful meeting where you can learn about what the organization needs. But also, when you have those meetings, if you get the opportunity, is find out what you can do for them without them asking you. Find out what they have in place and how you can improve it or streamline it. Don't come in asking how we can do this. Just come in saying we can do this, so they don't have to think about it. That's just my 2 cents.
I love it. And we'll probably have a part 2 of this conversation, because looks like we have a lot more questions in the chat. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. With that, Sohail, Nick, Avery, thank you very much for sharing such candid insights, and to all of you for joining and engaging. I also want to thank the entire ACT-IAC team and the COI team, Renata, Todd, and the rest of the team for supporting the planning of this event. The conversation doesn't end here. Connect with the ACT-IAC Health COI for more opportunities to collaborate and learn. And until next time, stay curious and keep innovating. Happy holidays. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.